5-degree days in February. It was the warmest month of any February that since they started recording records and that. But yeah, the warmest February ever in Southeast Michigan.
Yeah, I was just talking to our historical society, and they ended up doing their maple syrup collection in February
It's weird.
because it was so early, and
Mm-hmm.
they gave them a whole month to cook it down, but they go, this is just weird to be collecting maple syrup so early on. All right.
Pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Too quiet.
Tired. Group. We must be all tired. This is 8 o'clock for me here. I'm usually on the couch sleeping right now. I am. And luckily, I don't get many requests, and I don't understand why, but all my clubs that I've spoken to over the last few years have been the Midwest, down south, and then in the East, and very, very few on the West Coast, which is good because it's a 3-hour difference. And so if a club starts at 7 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock for me. And usually I just say, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So I get very few requests for that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like my digital forum group that's on Saturday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
That works real nice. And then that even lets me bring in European, at least people in England, because it's only 4 o'clock their time.
Right.
And they're willing to do that. So we've been able to do that a couple times. But yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to, like I say, 5 clubs in England, and they would have their meeting at 7 in the evening, and that would be 5 hours. It would be 2 o'clock in the afternoon for me, and that worked out perfect. And so I did about 5 of those, and those worked out really well. Matter of fact, when I'm at Madeline Island in June, we have a lady, Sue Bishop, who's from England. She's coming all the way to England to teach with our 4 instructors at Madeline Island, which is pretty cool for her, to come all the way over here to teach.
Yeah, it's got to be, that's a long plane flight.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're up to 27.
Do you know Charles Needle? You guys know who he is?
No.
He'd be a good one to have speak to your club. There's a lot of abstract macro. But he's teaching with me this year up there at Madeline.
Yeah, I'm always looking for speakers for either this group or my digital forum group. So
yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of work with out of Chicago. He does a lot of their, like the botanical gardens and stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, Jeff, I guess it's 7 o'clock.
Sure. You want to just welcome everybody, and then I'll.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone to the Menomonee Falls Camera Club. Tonight's going to be Mike Moats. I'm really excited about his, it's not photo stacking, but you're going to get the same wide range of in focus. So I'm really excited about his presentation on that. So Jeff, you want to introduce Mike?
Sure. Mike Moats is an international award-winning full-time pro macro photographer from Michigan. He is a Tamron Image Master, Vanguard Pro, and his articles and images have been published in many photo magazines for over 18 years. He has a macro photo club online with over 2,800 members from 28 countries. It's really a neat club. Mike teaches workshops and speaks at photo conferences throughout the world, although these days I think he's doing more Zoom than he is too many photo conferences because I don't know that many photo conferences anymore.
You
But
are right.
yeah. So here's Mike. If I can change.
I will share
I
my
keep
screen.
losing my spotlight. There we go.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. The conferences are kind of going away almost. I have one that I'm speaking at this year in November, but other than that, a lot of them had to shut down during the pandemic, you know,
Yeah.
including my macro conference that I used to run.
Yeah.
So, but okay, we'll get her started. You see my screen?
Yep.
All right,
Looks
very
good.
good. Very good. All right, so this program is called Getting It All in Focus Without Focus Stacking. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the point and shoot camera. I actually just got a new one here. I just got it in front of me. Hunt's Photo sent it to me at SX740SH. Canon point and shoot. It run me like $450. They gave me a little deal on it. But one great thing about the point and shoot, you know, it was no effort to shooting and getting everything in focus. And the same with what most people are using nowadays is their cell phone, right? And I have taken lots of pictures of my cell phone, and what those two cameras do really well and with no effort on our part is get everything in focus. This was a shot that I took with my cell phone. I was going to photograph a couple dahlias in the side of my home here, and I wanted to show the setup with my tripod. And rather than going and get one of my other cameras to photograph it, I just pulled out my cell phone and photographed this. And you can see everything from the very foreground where the flowers are in the foreground all the way to those arborvitaes that are probably 60 feet behind my camera. It gets everything in focus. All right, so those cameras do a great job if you're looking to get everything in focus. Now, I'm sure most of you are all using your DSLRs, or now you've merged into the mirrorless cameras, and with those cameras, we have to control our depth of field using our f-stop. So a little more complicated than just, you know, point and shoot cameras or cell phones, and where they take care of everything for us. We have to learn how to adjust that camera so that we get more or less in focus, right? So this is a good example of how those aperture works inside our lens and how we get the different depth of fields with the f-stops. Now, when I first started, I was completely self-taught. I didn't have any friends that were photographers. You know, this is 2001. We weren't on the internet yet. There was no classes in my area that I could take to learn how to photograph subjects. And, you know, by reading some of the books that were available, I learned about the f-stop and how it controlled the focus. Now, what I would do is I would go out into the field to photograph subjects, and I might look at a subject and say, well, I want just a little bit in focus. So then I would use the smaller f-stop numbers. And then if I wanted to get everything in focus, you know, the books that I read said that, you know, the higher the f-stop number, the more you get in focus. So as you can see in the little pictures over top of each f-stop, when you're shooting at a 2.8, you get the little guy in focus, but the background's out of focus. And as we go to the higher numbers and higher numbers and higher numbers, we get to the f32, you can see we get everything from front to back in focus. So when I started out, I was out there you know, shooting at f32 on a lot of my shots because that would give me maximum depth of field. Now, one thing about macro photography, which is so different than landscape wildlife photography, is that we work with very shallow depth of field when we're in very, very close to our subject. We get very, very little, tiny little bits of in focus when we're in really close, like you see here. Landscape photographers, wildlife photographers, they can shoot a mountain, you know, 5 miles away, or an elk or a deer, you know, 100 yards away, shoot at f8, and pretty much get most all in focus. But with macro photography, we get very little in focus at those smaller f-stops. So with this ruler, as you see here, I'm using a Tamron 90mm lens on my camera body, and I'm at an angle, as you can see, to that ruler. So I'm not parallel to it, I'm at an angle. And so many times when we're shooting, we can't always get parallel to flat subjects that maybe we may be shooting, or we're shooting on bad angles, and that's going to increase the amount of depth of field we need. So with that ruler on that angle, as you can see, in that close to that ruler, I'm getting literally 1/8 of an inch in focus. That's it. One tiny eighth of an inch. Look on a ruler and see that is a very tiny little area. That's all I get at that 2.8. So that's not going to really do much for me if I want to get, a lot of focus on this subject. But on the right side, you can see f32. I can get that whole ruler in focus, even in that close. I also set up this peacock feather. All right, same setup on an angle to the peacock feather. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, shooting in the f8 range is the best. It gives you the best, sharpest quality out of your lens. It's going to give you the least amount of what we're going to talk about a little bit later, the diffraction that you get when you're shooting high f-stops. So the problem with macro photography when we're shooting at f8 is I get very little of that feather in focus. You can see just a little band right across here that's in focus, but everything on top and below that line is out of focus. So the f8 doesn't do much good for a macro photographer when he's in really close. So let me bump it up now, f22. Now you're thinking f22 is a pretty big f-stop. You should get that all in focus, but you can't even get it all in focus even at f22. You can see the bottom of the feather still out of focus and the top of the feather out of focus. So a lot of you think, geez, f22, you should be able to get in that thing all in focus, but we still don't. But at f32, the biggest number, smallest opening in the aperture, I can get it all in focus. And so that's my style of shooting, is pretty much shooting most everything. What I want it all in focus, just shooting at f32. So this is a agave that I was shooting out in, it was in the San Diego Botanical Garden. And I saw this really cool line here that I wanted to capture, and which is what you see over here, this guy right here. It looks like kind of a duck's head or something, but it's a deep subject. You can see from front all the way to back. There's a lot of depth there. So I shot it at f32. And as you can see, I was able to get the front and the back all in focus on that subject. I like everything in focus. Same with this rose. A lot of depth there. When we're in really close, like you say, we're getting very little shallow depth, or getting very shallow depth of field on those small numbers. So going into that big f-stop numbers, I guarantee that I'm going to get everything in focus. This frog was shot at f32. Now, I did an article for Outdoor Photographer magazine a few years back, and this frog shot was in that article. And the editor emails me one morning, and he says, he says, I'm laying out that article, and he says, you got this frog shot. You listed the f-stop at f32. Is that correct, or did you make a mistake? I says, no, I shot it at f32. I says, you have the file there with the data. You can go and look at and check it out and see. So about an hour later, he emails me back. He says, you know what? I looked at the file. He says, you're right. It's at f32. He says, I just never heard of anybody shooting at f32. I said, I do it all the time. So I was in the art show business for 7 years. And what I learned is that people like images with everything in focus. And this was an image that I had hung in the very first year when I was in the art shows. The very first year, I had some of my soft focus flower photography, which is popular amongst macro photographers. But what I learned was the general public, who are non-photographers, non-artistic people, they don't understand out of focus images. So I had this one hanging in my booth, and there was two ladies standing there next to each other. And the one says to the other one, she goes, look at this one. It's all out of focus. And she didn't mean that in a good way. She meant there was something wrong with it. And there was a guy and a woman, I assume they're man and wife. And the guy says to the woman, I could overhear him say this. I says, I don't know much about photography, but at least I can get him in focus. So basically, he's just running down my photography, saying this guy can't even get an image in focus. So what I realize is that these people, as I said in the beginning of the program, they're using point and shoot cameras, they're using cell phones, and what do those do? They get everything in focus. So when they take pictures, they see it all in focus. And when they look at photographs, they tend to see everything in focus on most types of photography. So it was very, very hard for people to understand soft focus flower photography, which is real popular, like I said, amongst macro photographers. A lot of people use lens babies, and there's some lady photographers that have become really well known shooting this style of photography. But what I learned is that it didn't do much for me in terms of trying to sell this stuff when I was in the art show business. And so I stuck with the everything in focus style. So you may have heard people say, never ever shoot over f/16. And the problem with shooting over f/16 is we get what's called diffraction, okay? So diffraction, when we're shooting at these high f-stops, what happens is inside of our lens again, we're going to go look at this chart again. And when we're shooting at the 2.8, as I said, we're getting very shallow depth of field. And as we move up the f-stops, we get to that f/8 there. And that's typically where you try to shoot, if you can, in the f/8 range, because the f/8 causes the least amount of diffraction out of our lens. Now, diffraction is something that happens when we're shooting at those high f-stops. When we get up into that f/32 range, the aperture inside the lens is at the smallest opening. Now, when I go to photograph a subject at f/32 and that aperture is at that tiny little opening inside the lens, the light that is entering into that lens from the camera is traveling down that big lens, and all of a sudden now it meets up with this little aperture opening, and now the light is trying to squeeze into that little opening. And as it's squeezing in that little opening and moving towards your sensor, the light waves kind of shift a little bit. So when the image comes out of your camera, it's not the sharpest quality out of the lens. It's going to be a little bit of softness in the details. All right. So that's why everybody says don't shoot over f/16, because once you go over f/16, you start really causing a lot of the diffraction. And if possible, shooting at f/8. But as I showed you on that feather earlier, f/8 doesn't give us enough depth of field. I need the f/32 to get more depth of field. So now the great thing about dealing with this diffraction in the digital age is that we have sharpening programs in Photoshop. You got unsharp mask, and I don't use Photoshop. So I think someone said they have something called smart focus or smart sharpen or something like that. Nik software has Sharpener Pro. Topaz has Sharpen AI, and I use Smart Photo Editor for all my editing, and they have sharpening filters built into the program. You know what they designed sharpening programs for? Sharpening your image, yeah. So if you have a little softness in your image, you can actually correct it with the sharpening programs. So this is what I've been doing when I started, like I say, way back in 2001, and I'm shooting at that f/32. In 2004, when I got my first digital camera, I had Photoshop Elements, which was at that time the only program that you could get other than just full-blown Photoshop. And I started off with Elements program. It had unsharp mask in there. When I realized that my images looked a little soft coming out of the camera, I didn't understand why at the time because I didn't know anything what diffraction was. But I knew that with the sharpening tool, I could create sharpness in my image with that unsharp mask. And again, since then, the sharpening programs, there's just many programs out there for doing this, and they've gotten way, way better than they were back in 2004 when I started. All right, so yeah, you do have a program or a tool that you can correct that softness. So this is a sunflower that I photographed at one of the local farms. There's a flower farm not far from my house. And as you can see, when you look at the center part of this flower, there's a little softness in the details. So, when you shoot at the f/32 and you bring your image into your Photoshop program or whatever program you're using, you will see that softness in there. You will see the softness in the image there. But again, know that there is a tool to correct that. Now, once I bring it into my Smart Photo Editor program, I'll crop this. I might do a little adjustments on the color, and there it is with the sharpening. So now you can see all through the center of the flower here, it's all very sharp looking. All right, now look at the original again. You see the softness in there, and there's it with sharpened. Look at even the lines that are in the petals. Look at the little green lines in those petals, how sharp they are. Look at the original. You can't even hardly see those little lines. But that program has the ability to go in there and pull all that details out. Now, again, when you sharpen, there's levels that you can take it to where it can get too much sharpening. And sometimes you have to be careful that you don't go overboard on the sharpening. Some people say they don't like a lot of sharpening because of the fact that our eyes don't see things that sharp. So a lot of people will say, well, I'd rather have it look more natural. I tend to like it really sharp. I like where it pulls out those little lines and those petals and all the nice sharp detail. This is another little shy sunflower. And again, you can look through this area right in here and see that it's not tack sharp, obviously. It's shot at f/32, but f/32 gives me everything in focus. And I could maybe try and shoot at f/16 or f/22 and get it in focus, but should I take a chance? If I shoot at f/32, I'm guaranteed that everything's going to be in focus that I want in focus. So once I crop this again, sharpen it, and there it is. Very sharp looking. Like I say, I tend to like everything very sharp. Some people may decide they don't want it quite that sharp, but I tend to like it that way. And I get good response when I do them. This is a dahlia shot at the Chicago Botanical Garden. I was actually there with, they mentioned out of Chicago, their very first one they did, their flower conference. I was one of the instructors there, and I happened to shoot this at the Botanical Garden. But as you can see, it's not real super sharp throughout the subject, but once I process it, you can see on the left out of the camera, on the right with the sharpening. So again, we do get this softness from the shooting in the high f/step, but I guarantee myself to get everything in focus throughout the whole subject is what I'm after. And luckily I have the tools that can fix that. This is a goat's beard seed head, and you can see the details down in here, soft, all through here, they're all soft. And this is a mirrored image. I took it and mirrored it and sharpened it. This image here, I've posted this throughout the years on Facebook, and every time I post it, I always get people say, did you focus stack that? And I always say, nope, I shot it one shot, f/32. I didn't do any focus stacking. So they're always assuming that everything that's done in macro has to be done with focus stacking to get depth of field, and it's just not the case. Now your lens may only go to 22, and if it does, then that's the smallest aperture on your lens, just like 32 is smallest on mine. So you would shoot at the f/22 if you wanted the maximum depth of field out of your lens. All right, shooting in clutter. This is one of the big problems that we have as macro photographers. Everything we shoot is basically in clutter. So when we photograph flowers, you have all this clutter behind the subjects many times. This is a milkweed plant. And again, if I wanted to photograph the flowers, I'm going to have a cluttered background. And that's not good for macro. We want to have nice, clean backgrounds behind a subject so it doesn't compete and take away from our main subject. So a lot of photographers will say, well, you need to focus stack that. So because if you're shooting in clutter, you'll want to shoot at a smaller f-stop, so that you don't bring in all that clutter behind there. You blur out that clutter. The problem is at the smaller f-stop, you don't get enough depth of field on your subject many times. So that doesn't do us much good. So focus stacking is if you've not heard of it, I imagine most of you probably know what focus stacking is, but if you haven't, I'll just give you a little quick thing in here. Focus stacking is where we are going to photograph a subject multiple times at different focus point from front to back. And then we're going to take those images that we shoot and merge them into a program, and it's going to pull out the sharpest part of each image and create a fully focused subject. And in this case here, I'm shooting this Turk's cap lily where I think I shot it in f/8, and the background was far enough away that at f/8 I could blur it out like you see here. And my very first shot I set up on the front petal right here, this very front petal. That is where I put the focus, on the very front of the subject. All right, and then I photographed it, and then I refocused. And when I refocused, I went into the pistils and the stamens right here. And now you can see the front of the flower is a little soft now. Because again, at f/8, we're getting very little of that flower in focus. On the third shot, I moved into the back, in the very back in here where the stem is and the back petals of the flower. And on the fourth shot, I photographed the stem on the fourth shot in focus. Now look what happened to the rest of the flower when I went back and focused on the stem. So now we'll take those 4 images, we'll run them through a program. I used to use Helicon Focus when I tried focus stacking years and years ago when it first came out. and I use Helicon Focus. And so you would take those 4 images, put them through that program. There's other programs too. Zareen Stacker is another one, and also Photoshop will actually do focus stacking now. But once I merged those 4 images, they pulled out the sharpest part of each image, merged them into a fully focused flower. So you'll hear a lot of people say when you do macro photography, because the depth of field is so shallow that you have to do focus stacking. And I just showed you earlier that you don't. You can do it with everything in focus. But obviously, there are some problems with focus stacking. Now, if I wanted to photograph this little Gerber daisy here, and I wanted to shoot at a small f-stop to blur out the stairs that are in the background, right? Because I don't want stairs as my background. So I don't want to shoot at a high f-stop to bring in the stairs and clutter up my image. So I would focus stack. Now, if I was to start the process of focus stacking, I would have to first do some mathematics. I got to figure out how deep is that flower from the front to the back. All right, let's say that flower is 3 inches deep. Now, there are some apps that you can download onto your phone. They're called depth of field. It's an app, depth of field indicator, or it gives you how much depth of field at different f-stops you're using. And you would go into that program and you would say, it would ask you like, what is the distance between you and the subject? So let's say I figure from the front of my lens to the flower, I'm 6 inches away. And I put in 6 inches, and then it asked me, what f-stop are you shooting at? So let's say I choose 4.5. So it's going to figure I'm 6 inches away from the subject. I'm using a 4.5 f-stop, and it's going to tell me I'm going to get 1/4 of an inch in focus, 1/4 of an inch. Now I have to calculate how many quarters do I have to shoot? How many quarters, throughout that flower? Now there's 3 inches in that flower, right? There's 12 quarters in that flower. So I would start off focusing on the very front edge of the petals here. I'm going to get my 1/4 inch in focus. Now at the same time, remember, I'm blurring the stairs out in the background at 4.5, and that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve. That's why I have to focus that. All right, so I have to refocus 1/4 inch past that first quarter, and then the second quarter, a third, fourth, fifth, all the way through till I get the whole flower completely photographed from front to the back at 1/4 inch each time I refocus. So that's a lot of work, a lot of hassle trying to get the focus right as you go through that flower from front to back. So now we got to take those 12 images, take the time to download them into this program. The program's going to analyze each image, pull the sharpest part of each one, and it's going to give me a fully focused flower with a blurred background behind it. That's a lot of work, a lot of hassles doing that. The other problem is, let's say we were photographing that flower outside. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, it's windy every day. All right, so it's a big problem because you got to have that thing perfectly still on those 12 shots. If that thing starts moving around during any of those 12 shots, it messes up the whole thing. So that's a hassle. It's a problem. So what I can do is I could actually photograph that flower at f32 and still maintain a blurred background, which I'm going to show you here in a second. So we run into a lot of clutter, especially in botanical gardens. This is a flower farm where I shot those sunflowers I showed you near my home. And as you can see, if you're going to photograph any of the flowers in these rows, there's beautiful rows of flowers, one after another. There's going to be all kinds of clutter behind any of these flowers. So what I do is I create backgrounds, and I bring backgrounds with me to photograph. And that is my cure for the clutter. So what I do is I bring a background, I put my background behind the flower, and I can shoot at f32 because it's just going to reach back and hit my background, and it's going to be nice and clean. So when I set up, I shoot at f32 with these flowers. I get maximum depth of field, everything in front to back in focus, and with my nice clean background behind it. This is in my backyard. I'm photographing a new fern that just popped up. Again, I would have clutter behind there, but I can put a background behind it and get that clean background. Lily of the Valley is very difficult to shoot because they are growing in tons of clutter. And I have my background position behind my flower, and I really just needed the background to fill in this area up in here. because otherwise I would have clutter showing in that background there. So I'll hand hold these backgrounds. Sometimes I might use the clamp like you saw on that last one. This is up on Madeline Island. This was last year, and I had a student there. She was going to photograph one of these hibiscus, or I think that's what those things are, and I was holding the background for and diffuser. So you don't have to place the background to cover the whole back of the, whole back area, because all I need to do is look at the subject and go, this is all I need to make sure my background covers, because I'm going to crop this out when I get into my post-processing. So I just make sure the background covers behind the flower where I want it, and then I will crop out what I want in post-processing. Same with these lupin. Again, just use my background to eliminate all that clutter, shoot at f32, and then I can process later and sharpen and do my little filters, creative filters. Another one of lupins with some little leaves, and there it is. So I don't have to worry too much about getting the background in the whole background. I just need to make sure it's behind the subject, and then I will crop out when I get to post-processing. But as you can see, these are all everything in focus images. So I don't have to focus stack. Why would I focus stack and go through all that hassle that I just talked about when I can just pop a background behind it and shoot at a high f-stop and guarantee everything in focus, and then sharpen in post-processing. So let me show you how to create these backgrounds. There's a couple ways you can do this. This is kind of the fun way that I like to do it. Now, I went out to one of the local parks. You got my tripod set up. I'm using my macro lens because the macro lens works the best for this. If you're going to try this, if you have a macro lens, use that. Zoom lenses work okay, but not as good as the macro lens. All right, so now I've got my tripod set up. As you can see, I'm pointing at some grass, and this is what it looks like when it's all in focus. All right. Now, when we are in focus, and you would want to be manually focused, and you don't want to be using autofocus on, you want to be on manual focus, and you would manual focus on that subject. You know that if you were to take that focusing ring, once you have it in focus, and you take the focusing ring and turn it a little bit left, a little bit right of the focus point, that subject will start to go soft and out of focus. So you take the focusing ring, you rotate it a couple turns to the left, maybe a couple turns to the right. And one of the two ways, now on my lens, turning it to the right side actually blurs better. But when I start turning it to the right, it'll start to go out of focus. And I will take that focusing ring to the point where that subject right there turns into a solid color, completely out of focus. When I get it out of focus, I photograph it, and you end up with that right there. That's a natural green. That's grass that you would shoot behind a subject if you were able to blur it out. Kind of like that Turk's cap lily that I shot, where the background was way off in a distance and I was able to blur it at the f8. So that's a natural green that you would see many times in a lot of my shots from years ago when I didn't use backgrounds. When I was able to get the blurred backgrounds, it was that same solid green color. Now, say you're looking at that and you're going, well, I'm not real crazy about a solid color. So you don't have to take it completely out of focus. Just take it to the point where you leave a little bit of texture in there, a little bit of, blotchiness maybe. And so this subject here, instead of taking it to a solid color completely out of focus, I left a little bit of the texture in there. So you may think, well, that looks a little more natural to me, than just a solid color. If you're shooting different subjects, you might have some little yellow flowers and some brown grasses, then your green will turn into more of a yellowish green. And if I'm shooting some pink flowers, then I will get pinks in my greens. And you can just go to like botanical gardens where they have large plots of colorful flowers and just take them out of focus. And you will have all kinds of different colors and shades that you can come up with. So you can carry into the field, or even when you're shooting indoors in your home, you can use these backgrounds. Now, let's say that you don't want to go through the hassle of creating your own backgrounds. You could go to one of the hobby stores, and they have a section in those stores where they sell scrapbook items for people that do scrapbooking. In that area, they'll have a row of backgrounds, books of backgrounds for scrapbooking. Now, the one on the left, that is solid color backgrounds. There's 58 pages in there. It's 12 by 12. And those are all solid color backgrounds. And over on the right side, that's a book with 58 pages as well. But those are more abstracty looking pages. I pulled a couple out of there to show you. So they are kind of that blotchy look, just like I was showing you where I would take it out of focus, but maybe leave a little texture in there. So they have pages in there that'll give you that same kind of effect. If you don't want to go out and make your own, I kind of find making my own fun. And when I'm out, like I say, at botanical gardens, I'll just take stuff out of focus and create backgrounds from it. Now, if you're going to produce your own backgrounds, you're going to go out and photograph your own, you're going to want to print those on a matte paper. All right. You don't want to use glossy papers, semi-gloss, lusters, because it has a sheen on it. And if you're placing that behind your subject and it's at right angle of the light, it can actually cause a glare on that print. So you want to use a matte paper where there's no sheen on there. So try to find matte paper to print on. You'll also want to stiffen these things up because you don't want this floppy, thin piece of paper. So you're going to want to put a backing on that paper. You can use matte board, which is what we use to mat our images when we frame them. You could use foam core, which is the stuff they use on the back of prints when they frame them, or cardboard, just any type of material that you can attach that print to stiffen it up. You're going to also want to get some carpet tape. Now, carpet tape has adhesive on both sides of the tape, both sides. So get yourself some carpet tape. Now you want to lay your background, on the ground somewhere. And then I use 4 strips of carpet tape, as you can see, laid on top of that. And then you'll want to pull off this strip on this side so that it exposes the adhesive on this side. And once you have that adhesive exposed, you can lay your print right on top of there. Now, I will tell you that this carpet tape is super sticky, super sticky. If you go to lay that print on there and you've got it cockeyed or it's bubbled or something like that, and you go to pull it off, you will literally ruin that print trying to get it off there, and you ruin the backing. So you'll have to be very, very careful as you lay it down there. Make sure it's lined up just right and make sure you get it nice and flat as you lay it on there, because you will not get that print off there without ruining it. It'll destroy the print and you'll have to destroy the background too. All right, so print sizes. When I go out into the field, I have sizes anywhere from 8.5 to 13 by 19. You saw some of those shots where I was shooting the lupin, which are tall flowers. I got a 13 by 19. Most of the flowers I shoot are smaller flowers, and so I have 8.5 by 11s, and those work just fine for small flowers. Now, most of your backpacks nowadays have an opening in the pack where you can slide your backgrounds into that opening. That opening is actually designed to put a laptop in there or a notebook. You can use that area to slide in your backgrounds. Now, that background that you see right there is an 8.5 by 11 because that backpack is not very large. But if you have larger backpacks, you could fit larger prints into it. I also have a laptop bag that I bought that will hold larger prints in it. So I'll throw that over my shoulder when I go out to shoot and carry extra prints. Placing your point of focus. So a lot of times people ask me, well, where are you placing your focus when you're shooting an F-32? I am actually going halfway into the subject when I place my focus. A lot of times you'll hear a landscape photographer say that you should place your focus 1/3 of the way into the scene that you're shooting, because you'll get more depth of field behind the focus point than you do in the front. I have not found that to be the same in macro photography. I always get the same amount of focus in front as I do in back. So I just place my focus right halfway through the subject. So in this flower shot here, I was probably right in here somewhere, right in the middle. And then it'll get everything in focus in front and all the way into the back. So I'll look at my subject, evaluate the depth of it, and then kind of estimate where the middle is, put my focus there, and I'll get everything in focus from front to back. Botanical gardens, backyard gardens, lots of clutter. Any of the gardens you go to, you're going to deal with tons and tons of clutter around your subject you're shooting, okay? This is Mathi Botanical Garden at University of Michigan. This is Longwood Gardens out in Pennsylvania. But if you're going to shoot these agaves, and you're going to have windows in the background, and that's going to be a problem. So This is a Phoenix Botanical Garden, but again, any of these subjects you shoot, you're going to have a lot of clutter in the background. Lots of clutter. So there's two options here, all right? You can either get in close enough to fill the frame to eliminate any of the background of the subject, or you can insert your own background. So you have the two options. Fill in the frame is actually one of my favorite ways to shoot subjects. I love to take subjects and just completely fill the frame with the subject. So what we want to do is we go into those botanical gardens, the subject here, we're not going to necessarily just photograph one leaf and then bring in all the background behind it. We're going to look for a pattern inside the leaf. Maybe we'll look for 2 or 3 or 4 leaves that are overlapping, and we're going to get in close enough to fill the frame so we get only the subject in the frame. We eliminate dealing with the background by filling the frame with the subject. This is I think it was called a century plant at a botanical garden. And instead of shooting up in the upper areas here where I'm going to bring in all this grass stuff in the background and clutter it up, I just focused down in the center where he had a nice little abstract pattern down there and filled the frame with it. So again, we eliminate dealing with the background if we can focus in close. And what's great about lenses nowadays, these new zoom lenses that mine is an 18-300 zoom lens on my mirrorless camera, and on my DSLR, I've got an 18-400. And we can set up on the edge of a walkway, and we can shoot subjects at a distance and zoom out to 300-400 millimeters and capture small areas of subjects. This is at a botanical garden outside of Phoenix, and I just wanted to capture this little area right in here because, again, lots of clutter around that subject. So I just zoomed into this area right in there and captured that. So in this case, with my telephoto, I would capture maybe up in here. Just zoom in this little area right up in here and pull out an abstract out of that. This is a banana plant, actually. Longwood Gardens has these short banana plants that have beautiful colored leaves. And as you can see, I just found a section where the leaves were tightly packed together, captured all the leaves and filled the frame. Flowers, the same thing with flowers. If you can get in close enough and zoom in on a flower and fill the frame, you've eliminated the background. This is another plant that's at the Chicago Botanical Garden. It has like a spiral staircase, and I just filled the frame with it. Another one shot at the Chicago Botanical Garden, filled the frame. And this was shot at the Cox Arboretum down in Cincinnati, near Cincinnati, Ohio. And again, just filled the frame with the subject. So a lot of what we do, if you don't want to deal with backgrounds and deal with the cluttered backgrounds, just get in tight and fill the frame with your subject. And it makes a really nice image. And I get a lot of compliments on images like this where people really like how you fill the frame with them. It's a dahlia. And this is a cactus flower. And again, 18-400 zoom lens, zoomed in on that. So the other option, if you're not filling the frame, bring your backgrounds with you. So I'm at the Longwood Gardens here. I had a workshop I was doing, and I was holding the background and the diffuser for this guy setting up on these orchids, because as you can see behind the orchids, it's a mass of clutter back there. Now, I would go into there and shoot even by myself. And what I would do is I would set up my camera, I would set up my shot, and then I would set my self timer to 10 seconds, press the button on my camera, then walk over and pop out my background behind the flower. And 10 seconds later, it would take the picture. So that was actually shot at the Botanical Garden there, and I did it by myself. I framed up the subject, I set up my f-stop, and had the self timer set to 10 seconds, pressed the button, walked over, popped up the background behind the subject. Same with this. This is Duke University. They have a gardens at Duke University, and I was shooting tulips in the spring there. And again, lots of clutter around those tulips, so I just placed one of my backgrounds behind it. This is also at Duke University. It's a great subject because it's got three stages of life: a little bud, larger bud, and an open flower. But look at the clutter back there. All right. Just pop one of my green backgrounds behind it. All right, natural background. So this is a situation where you will occasionally find a great subject with a really nice natural background behind it. Okay. And that works well too. And I still shoot them in f32 because I want that nice background all in focus as well. So this was up at Madeline Island last year. And I photographed this beautiful lupin with this really great set of ferns right directly behind it. So again, shot at f32 to get everything in focus from the flower in the front to the ferns in the back. And when you want to shoot with natural backgrounds, this is the key to this, is you want to make sure that you only have a single subject as the background. You don't want multiple subjects back there because your viewer is going to say, well, what am I looking at here? There's 5 different subjects there. I've got a flower, but I've got, 4 or 5 different subjects in the background. So you want to make sure it's nice and simple. You want a nice, clean, single subject background behind your subject. Here's this is at Dow Gardens in Michigan. I like the little daisy flowers, and then it was this really nice consistent background behind it. And another lupin on Madeline Island, but this time I had 2 birch trees that were directly behind the lupin. So the birch trees become the background. This is bunchberry flowers. That's growing at the base of a tree trunk. So the tree trunk becomes my background. It makes a really nice natural background. And again, single subject behind my subject. These are oak leaves in the fall. It would rain that night. I went out in the morning, brought these 3 flowers out there. I put 3 flowers on top of the oak leaves. The oak leaves become my background. Again, single subject background behind my flowers. And ferns. I love ferns as backgrounds, so I put those little flowers in the ferns. And this is a old tree trunk that one of the park systems had cut down. It cracked open like you see, and it's got this area down in the bottom here where the knapwood flower seeds got in here and they grew, and the knapwoods grew right out of that crack. And the tree trunk makes a beautiful background behind my flowers. And again, it's a single subject. Remember that. No multiple subjects behind a single subject. Cactus makes a great background. Now, ISO, most of you probably know when you're shooting at that big f-stop number, that aperture opening is so small, it's not letting enough light in there, right? You getting a lot of light through that little opening. The great thing about digital photography is that we have ISO where we can adjust it and raise it up higher. So my cameras, my Fuji X-T30 mirrorless and my D7500 Nikon DSLR are both set at 2000 ISO. And that will give me a quick enough shutter speed. And even in low light conditions, even at f32, I have a very quick shutter speed. Now, not, I mean, I'm talking like a 30th of a second or a 60th of a second. So not like in the old days when I shot with Velvia film back in the film days. A slide film was a 50 ISO. If it was in dark conditions, I might have a 15, 20-second exposure at f32. But with that ISO at 2000, I have no issues with my shutter speed. Very quick shutter speeds. Now, my cameras will shoot at 2000 ISO with clean images. We're not back in the past. I remember in 2004, I bought my first Fuji S2 digital SLR, and you couldn't even shoot that camera at 400 ISO and get clean images. I mean, it was distorted. So big advancements over the years, and every time they come out with new generations, the ISOs go higher and higher and higher and cleaner images. So 2000 is not a problem for my cameras. To get clean images out of them. And even if there was any distortion or any type of pixelization from the high ISO, you've got programs that'll clean that up, noise reduction programs. Cropping. Now, let's say that you have a lens and hey, Mike, I can't get in close and fill the frame like you're doing. You're talking about filling the frame. I can't do that with mine. All right. The great thing about the newer cameras nowadays is my cameras are 26 megapixels, and I can do some pretty small crops out of those big megapixel cameras. A lot of people shooting the 50 megapixels or 40 megapixels, but mine's 26, and it still does an excellent job for cropping. So I don't necessarily shoot in tight. And when I set up the framing, I don't necessarily have to get in super tight. I can just get, around the subject a little bit and then crop out what I want in post-processing. So that right there is that cropped out. So even if you can't get in close enough, you don't have to. You can, shoot a little bit larger area and then crop out what you want. So I shot this flower right here, and all I wanted was this here. Now, I could have maybe worked myself in there to get a tight shot of it, but I didn't need to because I know I can crop out what I want in post-processing. Same with this flower here. I knew all I really wanted was all that little curly stuff right in there, right there. And then I just pulled it out and cropped it out. Same with this here. Again, I knew what I wanted when I shot it, and I cropped it out in post-processing. So you don't have to get in really super tight when you're shooting. If you have larger megapixel cameras, like most of you probably do nowadays, you can shoot a little bit larger areas. I mean, don't make it look like a landscape and expect to pull it out of there, but you can shoot just a little bit outside of the subject and then crop out what you want. This one here, same thing. I just really wanted this little area in here, so shot a little larger area, cropped it. This is the backside of a dead sunflower. And when I saw this, I knew all I really wanted was this area right in here. But I wasn't worried about it, getting in super tight. I just shot a large area, and then you can see over here on the right, cropped out what I wanted in post. All right. Can you get it all in focus at a smaller f-stop? Yeah, many times you could. I mean, there's times when you don't have to shoot at f32 to get all in focus. You could be shooting a subject that's pretty flat, and you could get it in focus at f11, f16. But my philosophy is, why take a chance? Why even have to figure and calculate, could I get it done with a smaller, just shoot at f32, and I guarantee I'm going to get everything in focus. I don't take a chance on getting something out of focus in there because I know that I can shoot a flat subject at f32 and it'll still come out okay with my sharpening programs. All right, now this is a very interesting book. You all should go to Amazon and purchase a copy to read because it's very interesting. Now, everybody knows Ansel Adams. I don't know of any photographer that doesn't know who Ansel Adams is. He is literally the most famous of all nature landscape photographers, Ansel Adams. Edward Weston, who is another very famous photographer at the same time when Ansel was out. They actually, the two of them, along with, I think there was 7 or 8 other photographers, started a camera club, started their own camera club in California, and it was called Group F64. That was the name of the camera club, Group F64. So their philosophy is that we want everything in focus. They wanted everything in focus, front to back, top to bottom, side to side. That was the group's philosophy. And in order to achieve everything in focus, they shot their images at f64. That's why they called the group f64, because they were shooting everything at f64, just like I'm out there shooting everything at f32. All right. This is Ansel Adams we're talking about, shooting at group f64. All right. So if it's good enough for Ansel, it's good enough for me. Anyways, it works. I've been doing it for 20 some years, and it's worked real well for me. So, all right. I want to just mention that I do have this macro photo club. I started it about 4 years ago. We have 2,800 members from 29 countries now. And it is over 280 instructional videos, covers 4 categories. So there's videos on equipment, there's videos on post-processing, there's videos on composition, and there's over 100 videos of me out in the field actually photographing subjects and showing you how I do it. All right. We also have a Facebook group for our members, our paid members, where you can post images. We have about 1,500 of our members on the Facebook group, and they share their images they're photographing. If you're interested in joining, it's a lifetime membership of $99. You only pay it one time. You never have to pay again. You'll always be a member. And the website is tinylandscapes.com. Just go there, and when you get to the site, look at the top. You'll see some links up there. Look for the one that says Macro Photo Club. Click on that, and it'll give you the information about the club and how to sign up. All right, gang. So I will stop the share on my screen here and be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, we got one. Do you use Flash?
Oh, good question. No, I do not. I never have used Flash. I shoot everything using whatever natural light is available. And that goes for outside and inside in my house. I use only natural light. I do not use any flash systems. Now I have on occasion, this is just a rare occasion, used a small LED light to maybe shine some light in an area that a subject, maybe it was a little dark in a certain area of the subject. But that's very, very rare when I use that. But I do carry a little LED light with me in my bag just in case. But everything that you've seen here today has all been shot with the natural light that was available. And I find that I just like natural light. There are some photographers that use flash and they do real well with them. I never cared for flash. I always felt a lot of times it would black out the backgrounds. And I didn't like that. I didn't like black backgrounds on my subjects. So I tried it when I first started back 21 years ago, I think it was, or 22 years ago when I started. And it seemed complicated to me. I didn't like the look that I was getting. And I just says, I'm going to just shoot everything natural light.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Go ahead and ask away.
Or did I cover it that well? There's no questions.
This group is quiet tonight. That's for
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
I noticed you had said that you shoot down to a 30th of a second, and I know a lot of times when you're in these places where you photograph, there's a little wind, and that wind is going to move those flowers around. How do you get them to look really sharp, even though you have some wind in there moving these plants?
Okay, that's a really good question. Now, most of the botanical gardens I shoot in, I don't really run into too much issues with wind. Now, Longwood Gardens, when I shoot there, they do open the windows on it's a 4.5 acre greenhouse. It's huge, but they do have windows all the way around. They do open those and they'll get a breeze in there, and that will cause a problem. And you're right. And so you know what I do? I go to an area where I don't have any wind. I'll avoid that. Now, this is how I do it when I shoot outdoors. I'm an early riser. I'm up at 5 in the morning. What I do in the morning is I get up, I look outside my backyard and I look at the flowers and the plants. And if they are all standing still and not moving, then I'll grab my gear and I'll start heading to the park. Now I want to leave in the dark because I want to get to the park at daybreak, right as light's starting to light up those fields and the woods. I'll get about an hour and a half, if I'm lucky, 2 hours of no wind or low wind. Okay. So all my shooting is all done at daybreak in the morning because that is the least likely time I'm going to get wind. I'm not going out at 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon because I'm going to have too much wind and it's going to be a big problem for me. So I'll shoot for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. Once that sun gets up and the light and it starts heating up the air, the wind starts picking up and then I'm heading home. I'm not going to deal with the wind. Now, for some people, they go, well, I can't get out in the morning. I sleep in or I work and I can't go out until the afternoon when I get home. That's a problem. It is. It's the number one problem for macro photography is the wind, dealing with it. So I've just learned to avoid the wind by shooting at daybreak in the mornings. And there's some mornings I get up and look outside my back window and I see flowers moving around. I'm not going out that day. I'm just not going to deal with it. But in most botanical gardens, if they're indoor, which I tend to like indoors because you don't have the wind problems, right? One of the problems with the outdoor botanical gardens is they don't open till 9, 10 o'clock. I can't get in there at daybreak, right? So now I got to deal with the wind. But if it's really windy, I'm just not going to shoot. It's just a waste of my time trying to capture those things and get them stopped. So yeah, that is a big problem. Good question.
Do you ever use any of the software which, where it says eliminate background and then insert your own background?
Yeah. If you have Photoshop skills, you can actually blur your background out in Photoshop if you have the skill to do that. I never acquired any of those skills, and honestly, I don't know why, but I just never had any interest. I actually never owned full-blown Photoshop. I always had the Photoshop Elements program and never learned much more than just basic processing in that program. I mean, I would use contrast boost and saturation boost and sharpening, unsharp mask. Other than that, I never really used any of the program for anything else other than just doing the basic processing. But when a lot of the programs like Nick Software, Topaz, and now I'm using Smart Photo Editor for the last 5 years, they have all these creative filters. And so you'll see some of the images I showed you today where they had some really interesting creative filters added onto the image. And those are all done in Smart Photo Editor. Topaz has all their programs with all kinds of interesting creative filters. Nick Software had their program. Yeah, if you have the skills, I know people that can actually go into Photoshop and take a cluttered background and blur it out, completely blur it out. So yeah, you could do that if you had that skill. So that would be an option if you didn't want to go through, creating backgrounds, putting backgrounds behind subject. You could just literally go out there. I don't know how much effort is put into blurring a background behind a subject in Photoshop because I've never done it, so I don't know how hard it is or easy it is.
It's gotten pretty easy these days.
Is it?
Yeah. A lot easier than it used to be 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. The nice thing about backgrounds is you can bring different types of backgrounds. You can have solid colors, you can have blotchy ones, you can have all different colors that you can use. So you could use like a complementary color to a flower you're photographing. So while you're there in the field, you can pop out different backgrounds and use those. And I'm sure, again, like I say, if you're in Photoshop, you could probably blur a background and change the color on it and do all that too. But a lot of people, I hear people, say, well, this macro photography is really hard. And it's usually because they're shooting into small f-stops and they're not getting enough in focus and they're disappointed. And I go, this is really simple. You pop a background behind it and shoot at f32. It doesn't get any easier than that. It's like shooting with a point and shoot.
Yeah.
And actually this year I'm going to actually use my cell phone and my point and shoot to do some of my flower photography just to show people that, hey, you can do the same thing with your point and shoot and your camera phone, put a background behind it and shoot it. It'll get it all in focus for you.
Sure. You are using a tripod, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. None of my shots are done handheld. They're all done with a tripod. And that is one thing that when you're shooting at an f32, you may not always get a fast enough shutter speed to handhold. So I'm always on a tripod, but I can't even if I tried to handhold, I'm too shaky. I remember going to the Meyer Botanical Garden, and it happened to be in March when I showed up. Well, I didn't know this, but they had the butterflies in the month of March. Well, the place is so packed with people, they won't allow you to bring your tripod in. And I have to be on a tripod because I'm too shaky. So I'm in there trying to photograph butterflies handheld. And basically I had 2 images that were sharp, and the other rest of the image I shot were all blurry. I just cannot hand hold a camera and get sharp images. It doesn't work for me. So I am always 100% on my tripod. But if you can handhold and you're steady enough, that's great because you don't have to deal with the tripod. But for me personally, I can't do that. I have to be on a tripod.
Any other questions?
Well, maybe a monopod might help a little bit.
Tried a monopod. I was still shaky. It sounds bizarre, but I swear to God, I was still moving side to side and front to back.
Oh, I know that feeling because I've gotten that way myself as I've gotten older. I'm not near as steady as I used to be. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I never have been. I'd be sitting there with a drink in my hand. My wife said, "Why are you shaking?" I go, "I'm not. I'm just. That's the way I am." I guess I got too much energy running in my veins or something. I don't know.
How often do you use diffusers?
Well, on a sunny day, I use it 100% of the time. I diffuse from the sunlight 100%. Because the problem with sunlight is it can wash out colors. It can cause shadows in areas that don't want shadows. I forget what the third one was. What is the other one? Oh, it can alter the colors. If you're shooting in another program I do, I actually have an example of a sumac branch that was shot with direct sunlight hitting that branch in the morning. And the early morning, late evening sun, it has a warmer feel to it. And what it does, it actually altered the color of those leaves to a yellowish green. And then once I diffused it, the green, natural green, came back on the branch. But yeah, it's a problem with direct sunlight on your subject, so I'm always shading my subject at 100%. Now, cloudy days, again, in my other programs, I actually have examples showing washed out colors on cloudy days. Subjects that are running parallel to the clouds, there's enough intensity of the light from the clouds and also reflection of the white clouds that can actually wash out colors on your subject. So I will diffuse even on cloudy days. And in the examples that I show in my other program, you'll see a flower that the colors are washed out. And once I put the diffuser over it and photograph it again, comes back to full color of the flower. It's amazing, even on cloudy days. Now, not all cloudy days, but I still have to make sure I have the diffuser with me at all times because it could be a problem on a cloudy day, but on a sunny day, it's 100% of the time I'm diffusing.
When you're at some of these different flower centers, they don't allow you to leave the path, which means you can't, I think, easily put something behind the flowers. Is that when you go to your second sort of
fill the frame
where you're just shooting tight rather than
fill
anything
in the
else?
frame? Exactly. Now, I use this thing called a plamp. Have you heard of a plamp?
Yes.
It has a clamp on one end. It has a flexible tubing. It's about 18, 20 inches, another clamp on the other end. So what I do with the clamp in those situations where I maybe I can't get in, you know, with hand holding my background, I will actually attach the background into the clamp on one end. And then that becomes like a 20-inch extension of my arm. And then I can reach that out and place it behind the flower that I'm shooting. And that will work. Now, if it's far enough back in, you're right. I'm not going to photograph it. But I could always just zoom in and maybe capture the flower that I'm photographing, then crop out the flower in post. Now, as far as backgrounds in the botanical gardens, I've been doing this for, 10 years in botanical gardens using my backgrounds. But the one thing that I always make sure that I do not touch any of the plants as I'm using the backgrounds behind a flower or whatever I'm shooting. I don't bang it into the plants because if somebody sees you taking that background and moving plants out of the way with it or banging plants, they will come over and say, hey, you can't be doing that. So I'm very, very careful not to be touching anything with my background. And if they see you're respectful of the plants and you're not touching anything, they don't care. I've never had anybody tell me that I couldn't use my backgrounds. But I did have one person that told me they were at Longwood Gardens and they were using it behind the orchids in the orchid room. And they did say that they were hitting some of the other orchids and so that, and someone came up and says, hey, stop, you can't be doing that. So you got to be really careful. If you get people going in banging plants with backgrounds, then they're going to start coming up with a new rule, right? You can't be doing backgrounds.
Yeah.
As far as tripods in botanical gardens, because I have to be on a tripod, I will contact the gardens or look at their website and see what their rules are on tripods. If they say no tripods, then I'm not going to that botanical garden because I know I'm not going to be able to handhold and shoot. Most botanical gardens I go to will allow tripods. Not 100%, but most of them will. Like Chicago Botanical Garden, I use my tripod there. Longwood Gardens, you can use anywhere outside. In the indoor gardens, it's from 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning till 12, and then you have to go outside. But most all gardens I go to, Meyer Garden, Dow Gardens, the St. Louis Gardens, all the different gardens, even the botanical gardens, Phoenix and Tucson's and San Diego, they all allow tripods. But I always make sure I contact before I go there because I don't want to show up and they say, hey, you can't use your tripod because it's a waste of my time to try to shoot handheld. So, but most of them are pretty cool about using tripods. Anyone else?
We got one. Do you incorporate available insects you find on flowers?
Do I do what?
Incorporate them, or I think use them when they're on the flowers.
Well, I shoot them when they're naturally there. In other words, I don't add them on there. But this is the other benefit of shooting at daybreak. If you go out there on cool mornings, I'm talking temps that are in the mid upper 40s, low 50s. At nighttime when those bugs, whatever bugs you see in the daytime flying around, they're going to be in those fields, same fields at nighttime. They're going to land on something during the evening, and they're going to be there in the morning. Now, when the temperature lowers down to that upper 40s, low 50s, the body temperature, the bugs will lower down to the point where they literally cannot move. They can't move until they warm up. So when I'm out there at daybreak and I'm walking through the field and I happen to find one of the little bugs on a flower or whatever plant they're on, they will be in a situation where they literally can't fly away. And now that gives me time to set up my tripod, work my background behind that subject and photograph it, and he's not going anywhere. All right. So if you go to my website and you look at the images and you see the bug images, the critter images, they're all shot at daybreak. And they're all subjects that are on those cool mornings where they can't move, and I can take my time and photograph them. I don't go out in the middle of the day when, you get close to them and they take off on you. That's frustrating. So everything I do is shot at daybreak. So I have the least amount of wind, and I also have the opportunity to maybe find bugs and stuff on flowers and plants that have landed for the night. And it gives me the time to set up my tripod, put a background behind it, and also there's no wind generally at that time in the morning, so I have no issues. Now, you may have heard photographers, macro photographers, they'll actually capture bugs and they'll put them in the refrigerator. And the refrigerator will lower the body temperatures down, and then they bring the bug out and put it on a flower and photograph it. So it's the same principle. You're just lowering the body temperature so it can't move. But it happens naturally in nature if you get out there early in the morning on cool mornings. Now, it's not easy to find them. You're in a big field and you got to walk real slow through this field and try to find them. And it's so it's not easy, but I found lots of them over the years. When you look at my website, there's tons of bug shots there, but they're all done at daybreak.
Okay.
I don't
Anybody
have a
else?
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I have a somewhat different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I shoot a lot of macros.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a bit smaller than the subjects that, these samples that we've seen tonight.
Yeah, because mine is technically more close-up photography.
Yeah,
than macro.
Yeah, mine's, I do a lot of bugs,
Yeah.
a lot of moths and so forth. And I actually have some practical examples here to show why I do focus stacking instead of high f-stops.
Right.
So if anybody's interested, I can share my screen and I can show how that works.
So if you're shooting,
zooming in and getting smaller.
If you're shooting like a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1 magnification, then your depth of field has shrunk down so small that even at an f32, you're not going to get it all in focus.
Yeah.
So in that case, you have to focus stack.
I'm shooting at 1-to-1 most of the time at my closest, although recently I got a new macro that lets me go to 1.4-to-1.
Yeah, and that's pretty high magnification.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I'll share my screen and I'll show you what I'm talking about here.
Sure. Just show us one or two, Jeff.
Sure,
Mike, his bugs are just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That Jeff does.
Okay, can you see the 3 moths?
No.
No, it's still showing just that you're sharing.
It says start sharing, double click to enter full screen mode.
Huh, what's going on? I know your internet connection sometimes is slow, but usually it pops up pretty quick.
There we are.
Okay, there it goes.
Oh.
It did it just as you quit.
Okay, I'll try again. Okay. Let me know when you can see them. I'll wait a little longer this time.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thank you for a great presentation. I think you did a fantastic job, and I think people are really excited and eager to probably go out.
Oops.
We see them now.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a typical type of picture that I take. Moth on the bark of a tree. You're talking about 1.33 inches by about 0.9 inches as far as the size, field of view that you're looking at. The one on the left is focus stack. The one in the middle is f22. You can see we're not in focus here. Not in focus here either, because that's the closest to the camera. f32, similar. But if you take a closer look at these, here's the focus stack. Everything completely in focus. Lots of detail. I don't know if it translates over Zoom, but little bristles on the antenna here, little hairs, for example, and everything from one corner to the next, totally in focus.
I still tell you, Jeff, that I can get it in focus at 1:1 f32. Now you got to sharpen it. Now you may not be showing the image sharpened there.
This is sharpened, okay? And I
This
didn't
one sharpen?
I didn't sharpen the focus stack. But
Okay.
notice to the right here, because
But my point is that you can shoot it at f32, but you have to sharpen it to make it look like
right,
you're at.
and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I shot this one's at f22.
But that looks sharp to me, though. It doesn't look that out of focus. Oh, you're talking about the back part.
Everything to the right of the moth here is
Right.
out of focus. And even the leg here goes out of focus. Okay. Now this is at f32, sharpened as well. You can see it's quite a bit softer. You did get a little bit more of the detail over here because your depth of field is better. But you can't make out any of the hairs.
Yeah, but you need to add more sharpening.
Well, I tried this with Topaz, Sharpen AI, which is one of the better programs, I understand. I don't do a lot of sharpening, so I'm not an expert at it. But I tried the best I could to get the most out of it. Going beyond this creates artifacts.
Yeah, I have to disagree. I've got a video that is in their photo club, a video of me shooting at 2:1, and I'm shooting a tendril at the size of my thumb, my thumbnail at 32, and it's all sharp. So I don't know how you did it, but all I can tell you is that I've done it. Now I will tell you that if you're going beyond 1:1,
I'd like to be able to. I'd like to see how it's done.
Yeah, if you're going beyond, again, 2:1, 3:1, 4:1, 5:1, the depth of field becomes so shallow that no, you can't get it.
But I'm not getting to that level.
Yeah, well, but even at 1:1, I've got plenty of videos that I show at 1:1, and they're in focus. So I don't know. Now maybe you're at an angle that created more depth of field on the subject.
So notice the detail here. Notice it's getting softer, like these eyes. Go back again. These are the eyes of the caterpillar. This little wart. Notice the detail here. Notice the detail of the hairs. This is f22, sharpened with Topaz Sharpen AI. It got quite a bit of detail, but compared to the focus stack, it's pretty darn soft.
Yeah.
And f32, here's what you get. Again, applying sharpening.
Yeah, I still think you get it sharper looking than sharpening. I do it all the time.
Yeah, you can make it look sharper, but you're distorting the detail. That's
I disagree with you. So I've been doing this for 20 some years. I don't know what to tell you. My images look pretty sharp.
Well, yeah, if you can point me to a place where I could try different sharpening techniques, I'm certainly open to that.
Yeah.
But the reason I do the focus stacking, and it's really easy these days with the
focus stacking works great. I just find it a hassle.
It's got the built-in feature, so you don't have to figure it out and everything.
Yeah. No, focus stacking works great, but it's a lot of hassle to me. And if I can get it done with one shot and just sharpen it, I don't see a point in focus stacking. But
can you point me to a resource about, getting better sharpening out of something?
Check his website.
Like F32 or whatever.
Well, I use the Smart Photo Editor, which has sharpening programs built into the program. So I've heard Topaz AI is good. I have not used it, so I don't know anything about it. I used to use Unsharp Mask, and I would use that program for many years before I discovered Smart Photo Editor. I also used the sharpening program Topaz. But I have shot stuff at 1:1, and like I said, I got a video with a Nisi filter screwed on the front of my lens, which took me to 2:1. And I have a video that shows me shooting. I put my thumb there. The tendril that I shot was the size of my thumbnail, and it was at 2:1. And I shot it at f32, and it's perfectly sharp. So I don't know.
Did you do any comparisons to the focus stacked version though?
Well, I'm seeing the sharp image with one shot, so I don't see any point in focus stacking. I just,
well, you know, I mean, not trying to be devil's advocate here, but you know, if you shoot at f32, you sharpen it really nicely. It looks sharp, but then if you go and compare it to a focus stacked image, if it's a really small image, again, you know, if you're really zooming in close,
well, if you
even
blow it
without
up
the
really
sharpening,
big,
you're going to see more detail.
if you blew it up
At
big
least
enough,
that's
you're
been my
probably right.
experience.
If you blew it up big enough. But I shoot everything so that you're seeing at 100%. You get people that are pixel peepers that blow things up to 200, 300%, and then they start analyzing every pixel. I don't do that. If it looks good at 100%, I'm happy.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for, explaining
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I guess good thing is go out and try practice and see what you can come up with. Yeah. So
But yeah,
You could try it
any
either
other-
way and see what works for you.
yeah. Yeah, it's really whatever works for you the best. I know Jeff has some great focus stack bugs that you can barely tell where they are on a tree branch and that.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different field too of doing stuff, and there's a lot of different ways to do this stuff. I gotta admit, I don't have the patience for focus stacking either, Mike, so
No.
I
You'll
tried
see
it,
on their
I gave
website
it
they got a bug's fly's head filling the frame. They got like 60 shots of it.
yeah
They actually some of the cameras now actually have focus stacking built into the cameras, like
yes.
the Olympus does, where they'll actually do the focus stacking for you. And then there's that Helicon Focus has some kind of a program where it'll actually do all the focus stacking for you, and it'll run through and change the focus and does everything automatic for you,
yeah
which is much easier than doing it, focusing yourself.
yep yeah there's a lot of new stuff coming out, and everything's getting better every year. It's so much easier than when we did it in film.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is true though. I call myself a macro photographer. I'm not technically a macro photographer. Macro photographer would be shooting 1:1 or higher magnifications. That's a
Yeah.
technical term for it. I'm really what you'd call a close-up photographer. And so for what I do, the way I do it, it works fantastic for everything I do.
Yep.
If I was a high magnification photographer, it would be much more difficult to do what I do, because the depth of field gets so shallow that even with a high
Right.
f-stop or a high high f-stop,
Yeah.
it's tougher to get it all in focus. Yeah.
Mike, I don't know if you mentioned this. Are you using a full frame camera?
No, I've always used crop sensors.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just it adds a little length onto your lenses. So if if you shot a 100mm macro lens on a crop sensor, you'd be shooting like a 150 if it's a 1.5 crop. Whereas a full frame, it'd still be 100mm. So I like the extra length on the lenses when you use the crop sensors. So I always use crop sensors. I always bought cheap cameras too. One thing that I learned was that about 60% of the people that come through my workshops were using cameras that were $1,000 or less, the camera bodies. And I remember Bill Fortney at one of the photo conferences, he worked for Nikon. He says, I know you're using our D7000 camera body. He says, this is a nice camera, but he says, how come you're not using our professional bodies? I said, well, Bill, if I'm using your $6,500 camera body, those people leave my workshop saying Mike's images look great. He's got a $6,500 camera. And, maybe they have a camera that's under $1,000. They're not going to get images as good as I get them with a $6,500 camera. So I always bought cameras that were $1,000 or less. And it was to show the people with those less expensive cameras that you don't need an expensive camera for macro photography. You can get by with a $500 entry level camera.
Yeah.
So now there's different types of photography that require different features. Maybe you need high frames per second for what you do, or maybe you need super high ISO with low noise for what you do. But in macro, that stuff doesn't mean anything. So I always made sure, like that mirrorless camera, when I got one, I called Hunts. I says, what do you got that's under $1,000? Well, we got an XT30 Mark II. It's $899. Send me one. When I bought my DSLRs, I always made sure they were right around that $1,000 price range. So now back in the old days, in 2004, when I bought the first digital camera, the cheapest one was $2,000.
Yeah.
That was the cheapest one. So you had to spend money then, but I could take an entry-level $500 DSLR or a mirrorless camera and produce excellent macro images.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was always to make the point to the people that you don't have to have expensive equipment to do this.
Yeah. When I met you at Swimsea, you were talking all about that stuff in Michigan, and when we did the Swimsea weekends, and
yeah,
that's what got us hooked with you, and why I think Wacko has had you a couple times, and
yeah,
and that because everything you teach is so practical that just about anybody, all of our people in our group could do what you're doing with a little
simple.
practice.
It's not that hard, and you don't need to spend a ton of money. Now, again, there are other types of photography that require you to spend more money on their cameras based on what they need, but that's not the case for macro photography.
Yeah,
we can get by with lesser expensive equipment. Even the lenses, I've always used Tamron lenses. There'll be people that'll say, "Oh, I would never use a third-party lens. Only use Canon or Nikon or whatever." But I've always, and those lenses were always the least expensive of the macro lenses.
yeah.
But a lot of people appreciate hearing that, because not everybody wants to go out and spend, $5,000 on a camera body and thousands of dollars on lenses.
No. And the Tamron lenses are awfully sharp.
Yeah, I don't have any problem. Well, I've had people say, well, they're a little bit soft. I go, it doesn't matter to me. I'm shooting at f/32 and I'm getting all kinds of diffraction anyways.
Yep. Yep.
So
No,
what if the lens is a little bit soft? I'm already
Yeah.
shooting soft as it is.
Yeah, their contrast was always a little lower, but that was an easy enough fix in processing too.
I used to always hear the reason why some of the people didn't like the Tamron lenses, because they weren't as fast, I guess, at focusing or something, like for people, bird photographers or whatever, that were moving subjects they were shooting, and lenses didn't focus fast enough. I don't know. But again, it doesn't matter to us.
No.
We're shooting stationary subjects, so they're not going anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, if your subject's not moving, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. So but again, if you're maybe a bird photographer, you're shooting birds in flight, maybe the Canon, Nikons perform better for focusing on subjects as they're moving. I don't know. But that's things I've heard that were people that knocked the Tamron or Sigma too.
Yeah. And they're both good lens companies. I sold Tamron way back when I used to be a camera store, and they were always very sharp, good lenses and inexpensive. So
one of the big problems now is that they've eliminated all their DSLR macro lenses.
Yeah.
When I talked to Hunts one day, I said, well, what macro lenses do you offer for DSLRs? All they had was the Canon 100 and the Tamron or the Nikon 105. The Tamron has not one single macro lens in their lens collection right now.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow. That's
Well, think about
amazing.
even like fisheye too, and that, you can't really buy fisheye.
Yeah.
So a lot of the lenses, are really disappeared. But what's kind of nice is with your presentation is, I call it, low budget, entry level, but you get really good quality pictures.
Yeah. Now they do have a lot of companies have macro lenses for mirrorless cameras now. Like when I asked Hunts, well, how many lenses do you have for mirrorless? Well, he had a dozen of them. But when it came to the DSLRs, they only had 2.
Yeah.
And like I said, Tamron literally discontinued every lens they made for DSLRs. And so I've been sponsored by them for 15 years, and now they just recently dropped me. They go, we don't need a macro photographer. We don't have any macro lenses anymore.
Jeez.
Okay. Now, now it's not to say they won't come out with a macro lens for a mirrorless camera. They're just not putting any energy into making lenses for DSLRs anymore.
No, DSLRs are on their way out, unfortunately, in some ways. I love the lighter weight of the mirrorless cameras for me.
Yeah.
But,
Oh yeah. That little compact camera is so much nicer than the big honking
Yeah.
thing that I usually carry around.
Some of
Yeah.
these newer lenses, they're getting to a point where you can kind of use macro photography on some of these high-end lenses.
Yeah. Well, I'm using my zoom lenses because they will focus down to 1.5 by 2.5 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how small I can focus. And so 90% of what I shoot is larger areas than 1.5 by 2.5 inches. So
Well, what's kind of
those lenses work great.
nice
Yeah.
is you can reach out and get into, places that you can't physically walk into.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what's so great in the botanical gardens, where
And
you
then
can't leave the pathway.
I do think too, in that, the farther you're back, I think your depth of field actually does increase a little bit too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's easy to do macro. I mean, it's not hard. No, close up. Like I say, if you want to get technical in terms, I don't actually like the terms the way they're set up. I think close up should be called macro, and 1-to-1 and higher should be micro.
Yeah.
And the Nikon lenses call themselves micro lenses. They're micro lenses, not macro lenses.
Yeah.
And they're 1-to-1, their lenses. They call them micro lenses. So I always thought that macro should be called, close up should be called macro. 1-to-1 or higher should be micro.
Yeah.
But and a lot of people, they'll say, they'll be shooting close up, but they'll say, well, I'm using a macro lens, so I'm shooting macro photography because they're using a macro lens.
Yeah.
Well, that's not technically true.
No, not technically the case. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Times have changed. That's
But I can take you onto any of the flower sites, any of the macro sites that are on Facebook and point out pretty much every image I see. I can say that's not a macro shot. That's not a 1-to-1. That's not a 1-to-1. I know how small a 1-to-1 is. And most people that are posting things calling it macro photography, it's really not. It's more close-up photography.
Yep.
But they still call it macro photography. But you do get a lot of people that are hardcore 1-to-1 and higher that don't like that we call our stuff macro. That's close up,
Yeah.
Well, you're not a macro photographer. I go, I call myself a macro photographer.
I just call myself a photographer, and I don't pick.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about any of the rest.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well,
all right, gang.
We got to wrap it
fun.
up because we do have more of our camera club stuff to do. So,
all right. Yeah,
Michael,
like I said, this was more fun than watching TV on the couch and falling asleep. So,
well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I know we enjoyed it. I know we'll hear a lot of good comments. I always enjoy your presentations and
thanks.
Learn a little bit something each time. I definitely have to get that book.
Yeah, that's a really interesting book, Ansel Adams. But yeah, they were shooting at F-64.
Yeah.
And there was a quote. I want to take the quote. I copied it, but it said that they were shooting at F-64, which produced the smallest aperture out of the lens, creating the most depth of field out of their lenses.
Yeah.
And it's Ansel Adams, and they were and Edward Weston, and they were shooting at F-64, smallest aperture. And it seemed to work pretty good for them.
Yeah, film was a lot different back then.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
And I don't know if the large format cameras, maybe they were handling the depth of, or the diffraction better, because diffraction it's by using that small small aperture opening, it's a physical thing that happens. It creates softness. And so how they were able to get images that look sharp at F-64 with their smallest aperture opening, and maybe it had something to do with the types of lenses on large format cameras. I don't know.
Part of it is the distance. As you get closer, your depth.
Yeah, but there's still landscape photographers who would tell you they'll never shoot at F-32 though.
Yeah.
Because of the softness.
But it's not as much of an effect as you shoot further out. The distance is an effect on.
And they didn't have software to correct it.
No.
They
they would process their film differently to correct for it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
'Cause
I have
they
no
would
idea.
add some contrast to it and that. Well, Ansel did a lot in the dark room, so.
You know what, the reason why they were shooting with everything in focus is because when you read the book, you'll read about it, that all the famous photographers in the 40s were all on the East Coast in New York. And what they were doing is they were shooting selective focus, and they were shooting at smaller f-stops, getting some in focus, some out of focus. And so they had developed this famous style of shooting this in focus, out of focus type thing. And so they were going in the opposite direction, saying, hey, instead of doing what they're doing on the East Coast, let's do it with everything in focus and we'll start our own style. And so that's how that all came up, was just trying to come up with something different other than what they were doing on the East Coast. So it's a really interesting story, though.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah.
Take a look. Well,
okay,
Mike,
gang, I'm going to head out. Thanks a lot for listening.
We appreciate it. Great
Thank you.
presentation as usual. And we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Okay, Clint.
Well, Jeff, yeah, I'll go right into it. Jeff, do you have any news on WACO or PSA or digital form?
WACO, we have the competition deadline is coming up in a couple weeks. So get your images in for the competition. The uploader is going. We have people submitting, so good time to get your images in for the competition. PSA doesn't have too much. Their next thing is they're going to Door County in the middle of May, and then they'll have their summer break and they'll start back up in November. So not too much going on there. Digital forum, we have just a minute, because I want to make sure I get it right.
No problem.
2 seconds.
Thank you for looking that up.
I'm just working on them. So Gregory Holden is our next presentation on how to why black and white photography is still important. So that will be in April. In May, we have Russell Graves on shooting wildlife images that win contests. And after that, I don't have anything, so we're still working on that stuff for digital forum.
Okay, cool. I see May 11th, we have the Shady Lane Nursery photo shoot. And then also Saturday, June 1st would be the zoo trip. I guess that's going to be the outdoor shooting. So that should be a lot of fun. Tonight we have show and tell. We got Jim and we have Ken. Any of them would like to start first? If they're here?
Which Ken?
Ken Warning.
Oh,
Ken's
he's not
not
going to be
available
here.
tonight.
Okay.
He moved today and he has no internet.
Okay, yeah, then it's a little hard. Is Jim
Yep.
Jim Bauer?
Yeah, I'm here. I can go
Okay.
share my screen. And this is it. Share sound. Optimize video. And here we go. Oh, share.
Yep.
Okay, you should be seeing Door County map.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Every year we try to get up to Door County at least once a year. We stay way up in Gills Rock up here because I'm always hoping to catch some northern lights or at least some dark sky. So this is a good place to stay. So basically, we found a place, I call it the Bates Place. It's called the Shoreline Inn, and it's one of the old buildings up there. This is it. 14 rooms. They open up to the parking lot on the back. It's old. It's nice and clean. It's pretty decent staying there. And you got no road between you and the lake. So you get a pretty good view. So up there, excuse my shaking. I'm doing some shaking here too. There's a real good restaurant attached to it. It's a lot of fun, good meals. The Anderson Dock, Monday night, we got up there and I did some evening shots, and I got Anderson Dock, and the fire department museum was open, and we got some nice evening shots of that. This happens to be the view from the hotel or motel deck that we were at. And the reason I say this is really a good spot where people congregate. They park over here and they come over here. And if there are people down here late at night, there are northern lights happening. So on this room, I happen to set up a GoPro camera out doing time lapse. And then every once in a while I check and I start to see people showing up outside. So if people show up outside, you go down to there and down to that dock and spend about an hour shooting northern lights. Check my Aurora app and it said that the lights were visible, and sure enough. And what surprised me is people were getting decent shots with their cell phones. Put it on night mode. They put it on night mode. They handheld it up and took a shot. I don't know how long. They held it steady and took a shot, and they're getting some decent stuff. So so that was kind of fun. This next image is a time lapse, and you'll see people show up. But the interesting part is right here at the very end here, you can see the northern lights come in and go out. Now that was about 20 minutes over there that took for that to do that. I'll run this one more time for everybody. But people show up. I happen to be down here when the people get here. There, I'm there. But now you see the northern lights. I was just surprised the GoPro caught that. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun and pretty neat because it didn't happen the rest of the week. So I got that. This happens to be northern lights from right here in Germantown in my backyard. Very weak, but one of the nights the app, Aurora app, said that they could be visible. I went outside and took pictures. I had my camera set up on a tripod facing that way. One of the neighbors called the cops, and they came by and turned on an extremely bright light and looked, and then they drove off. Basically, though, what I'm showing tonight these are birds in my backyard. I can sit out on my deck. I put on a 400 millimeter lens, and I sit and I can go out there and I get some really good shots. They're all basically set up between the feeders and the stuff in the backyard. I have going branches. This is from a tree in the neighbor's yard behind me. I have a water feature in the backyard. I can get many, the birds are really attracted to these flat rocks in here, and they just love to take baths. So that works out really good. Cedar waxwings. I'm getting birds that I've never seen in the water before, even in the water. They can't seem to resist it. So this was kind of neat. These guys, there was a flock of these, let's say. The neighbor's yard and behind me has all these berries, and this flock of them showed up one day, and in about an hour's time, they ate all the berries. I mean, they ate all the berries, and there had been about 50 birds, and I just happened to hit it right. They were busy eating. I got out there and I could get all the shots I wanted. So that was a bit challenging, kind of fun. Not a bird, but in the backyard. More birds in the phone, morning doves. The little chickadees, he's tough to get. I'm working on still trying to get a good one of him. Bunting, indigo bunting out in the backyard. The Orioles, get them in spring. I don't know what half of these are. These are just regular sparrows. Robins in the water, more sparrows in the snow. A lot of fun. I enjoy the birds. It's real easy for me to sneak out there. If they come through in flocks, you get several different kinds that show up, and I can just sit on the deck on a lawn chair and I sit out there quietly. This guy showed up with it must have been a squirrel, but he was sitting in the tree behind me, and I saw him through the window, and I snuck outside and actually sat down on the back step by the back door, and he didn't fly away. He was so interested in eating, so I could get some shots. And then these other guys, they were all here too. This I thought was kind of cute. He was hiding under the leaf. It was raining out. He took a little bit of shelter there. So that was interesting. But a lot of these birds, hummingbirds kind of on branches, you can see them by the feeder a lot. but I saw this guy up in the tree, and this one too. So it's like they're about 20 feet away from the feeder. So just taking their turn at the bird feeder. More in the water. Peanuts. These guys love the peanuts. They're work hard for those. Now these are just ones at the feeder. So I've got a few of those. This he wasn't at the flower. That was the feeder. I put the flower in. So a couple of flying birds here. I tried to get a little faster action. Tried to freeze them a little more. Probably everything is 1500th of a second or a little faster. A bright day. This happens to be a hawk from my cell phone through the window because I've never seen a hawk in the fountain before. And he was just standing there all dumbfounded. This is the backyard. Basically where I'm standing is where I shoot from. I sit on a chair. I've got branches that I can put up here. The birds will sit up on this fence ledge. They'll fly to a branch. If it's high enough, I can get the green background here. And then they go to the feeder and back, and they go down to the water, and it's a good place to shoot. Not a very big backyard, but for backyard birds, it works real well. And this is facing the other direction. I can sit up back here. So real well.
Jim,
That's it.
I think we're gonna have to come over for a field trip and maybe even have a barbecue after.
Yes, some smoked meat or something, eh?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, it worked out. It works out real well for me. I get a lot of birds, and I'm happy with it. So it's a lot of fun. So that's it. That's all I got. So I'm going to stop sharing here. So.
No, very nice. I thought those were really nice, beautiful pictures in that. For going up and checking out the Northern Lights when you went up to Door County, is there a specific time that you like to go up, or you just like to go up anytime?
We go anytime, mostly when it's convenient for us. But I do always check. First of all, is there going to be no moon? Because it should be nice and dark with no moon. So if we hit that, then I just take chances. I go up and I watch my app. And I had 2 years in the past 4 years, 2 years I've got Northern Lights and pretty decent. So it's like I happened to hit it lucky. So in a week's time, this time it was just the first night. The first time I was up there was a couple of nights, and one of the nights it was best at 3 a.m, and I was already in bed by then. So, but I got this year was about 11 o'clock at night.
With your time lapse video that you did with your GoPro,
yeah.
What type? Did you do it like every 15 minutes or every?
Oh no, that was about every 5 seconds probably.
Oh, okay.
It would take a 5 second, or it would take a video, one shot every 5 seconds. Of course, then you're playing it at 30 frames per second. So that was about from 7 o'clock till 11. But it was, that's what that was. And it did surprisingly well. Next time I'm going to take it down to the viewing part and actually aim it at the Northern Lights and see if I can get a time lapse of them next year. Or maybe this year. We'll try it. Who knows?
Supposedly, I forget, I seen just recently, I forget if it's March or April, this time is actually supposed to be the best time to see the Northern Lights, even more than fall time.
Oh, okay.
I guess that's the highest percentage of seeing Northern Lights in our area.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. There's a really good app, Aurora, and it's it shows you where the Aurora Borealis is and best places to view it. Well, it's usually Canada somewhere, but it does, if it comes down to our area, it'll even tell you there's a shot at seeing the Aurora or the Borealis tonight or whatever night. Yeah.
Yeah, I checked spaceweather.com for that too. That's another good one too.
And I was surprised there were a lot of people just chasing the Aurora. They came from the other side of the dark park up there. The eastern side of the peninsula, and then they were on my side, and they said, well, it actually was better on this side than over there, and they're in touch with each other, and they call their friends, and their friends come up, and so there's quite a following, and with the cell phones, so it works out pretty good.
Yeah, the cell phones work out really good.
Yeah, they did, yes.
So
yeah, this year's the best for Aurora, just because we're at solar maximum, so there's a lot of sunspot activity, and that's what generates the Aurora. So this is actually the best year for Aurora. That's going to be for the 7-year cycle. So
I'm looking forward to it then.
Should be real good. Well, then I suppose I can do the presentation, President's Challenge. Let me share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Let's do this. I need mute. I need sound. A little different. Let's click on. Hey, Jeff, should I also do the optimize for video clip too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Click on that, and then should be ready to share. All right. Let's press play.
Yep.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals, they take us higher. The night's young and it's just begun as she puts her hand in mine. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be two hearts running wild. Now the morning is the afternoon. We lay awake in bed. The laughs so loud as the hours pass. We're gonna do it all again. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be, we're gonna be two hearts running wild. The moonlights, summer sky, it was the best we ever had. And we'll stay young forever. We'll never have regrets. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be two hearts running wild. We're gonna be, we're gonna be two hearts running wild. Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals, they take us higher. The night's young and it's just begun as she puts her hand in mine. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be two hearts running wild. so loud as the hours pass. We're gonna do it all again. We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the pictures, and thank you everyone for submitting. Really good pictures, everyone. So Jeff, is anything else for tonight that you wanna? Got 10 minutes. Oh, 9 minutes now. Any questions or comments on anyone?
I do.
Yeah. Lynette?
Some of you know last year I became involved with the MS Society. So they, through a person I knew with MS, I started volunteering. And I have a list of dates that they need volunteer photographers for. And it's mostly in April and May. And it's from Kenosha, De Pere, Sheboygan, Madison, La Crosse, Brookfield, Janesville, and Wausau. So if anybody is interested, it was so rewarding, so much fun, so emotional in such a great way. So if anybody would like to be a volunteer photographer, they're in need of them. That's it.
Can you
It's
tell a
a-
little bit more? Would that be, let's say if we did the Wausau, would
Yes.
that be like an overnight thing?
It's completely on you, so
Okay.
there's no compensation for that.
Okay.
I did one last year in the Dells where I stayed overnight. It was the bike-a-thon.
Okay.
And, it depends on what person can volunteer. Most of the ones, like these are just the walks. So this is probably about a 3-4 hour commitment.
Okay.
And then you go and then you just shoot. You shoot people trying to raise money, having fun. And then the pictures all go to the MS Society and then they get posted on for all the people that participated. So of the here and they are looking if anybody is interested.
Cool. Well, thank you for letting us know on that.
I'm sorry. So if somebody's interested, then what, Linnea?
Oh, you contact me? Yeah, I mean my email's on the newsletter and I can send you the dates.
Okay.
I tried to do as many last year as possible. I think I had 1,000 photos, and once you look at one bicycle, they all kind of look alike. But some of the shots were really cool, and that was just they do one bike thing, but this is just the walks. So it's really kind of neat because people are just walking, but it's fun to see what you can capture. Yeah. So yeah, Brian, let me know, and then I can send you the list. I can forward it on to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any questions or comments, anyone? I know it's pretty quiet tonight.
Yeah, it's a quiet group. Well, I'm going to promote a couple of things here, and maybe something that we might want to do, put a booth up in is Old Falls Village Park has a bunch of different days coming up. The first one is Revolutionary War Days. May 3rd through the 5th. Actually, I think it's the 4th and 5th really is what's important. Where the reenactors come and do the Revolutionary War. But this is at Old Falls Village, and it might be something where if we can get a couple people to man like a booth, we could promote our club and help people out with taking pictures there. Plus they could use people taking pictures, so might be something that we could look at doing. They also have World War II Days, which is going to be June 14th through the 16th, and World War I Days, October 4th through the 6th. So they're always looking for photos so that they can promote the park. It's in Menomonee Falls on Pilgrim Road and Q. So I'll keep telling people about it, mentioning it. I've gotten involved with a group that's trying to do all this stuff and thought, well, it's a lot of good photo opportunities right in our own backyard. So
Yeah, nice and close and convenient. And when you think about it, is where we used to go to the for our Christmas party at the rec department. It's basically what, a mile or two right down the road.
yeah, right down Pilgrim Road, right on the edge of the falls. They have quite a few different old buildings. A lot of stuff going on. They do a lot of fish fries and other things, but the reenactment is sort of fun, and you don't see Revolutionary War too often, and neither do you see World War I or II. And I believe they're also going to do the Korean War. I just don't know what the dates are. And they're going to do a Renaissance fair.
Ooh, Renaissance fair. I know some people used to like to go down to Bristol for
Right.
that.
We'd go all the way down to Bristol. Here we're going to have it right in our own backyard. Entry's generally going to be $10 a person, so it's very inexpensive to get in. And you can spend a day there. They also have a 2-day pass for it as well.
Jeff, you were saying about maybe doing a photo, do you want to say a photo booth? But so something like that, then that our cover charge would be taken care of then, right?
I'd have to check and see, but to do a table, we could have some brochures out and somebody just manning a table, and or just trying to get people to get out there to photograph would be great, because they really need the photos, and they need good photos, not some of the stuff that they've been able to get from people. So,
well, I think we can do a phenomenal job with, you know, the photographers in our club here.
Yeah, and with it being, you know, Menomonee Falls, it's a good way to give back to the community. And that.
Jeff, how do we go about getting this organized? Or do we contact? Are you the line leader? Do we contact them or?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can handle a lot of it. I'm on the board of directors for the group. But I just started. I'm working on their website right now. But yeah, as we get a little bit closer, we can figure out different things that we might be able to do. Although we don't have a lot of time with May 3rd, 4th and 5th coming so
Only a
fast.
month away.
Yeah, less than a month away with the way April's going. But even just if you come and photograph, we'd love to get the photos. And I'm going to check next week to see what it would be to get a table there. And, you know, we could put up the brochures that we've made. And if somebody can man it, that's great. I can probably create a sign or two that says Menomonee Falls Camera Club, and, you know, ask us questions.
But
whatever.
by chance, do you know the time frame for this? You know, for hour wise?
No, I don't know that yet. They're still getting that put together, and they haven't gotten it to me yet.
I mentioned something about the time. I've been there several times, and usually they have their reenactments around 2:00 in the afternoon, which is probably the highlight of their program, when they shoot off the cannons and have the soldiers running around.
Yeah.
First, I think you're going to be our group leader.
Yeah, I should have the schedule soon, and what I can do is probably email everybody once I get their new website up and running. It will be all in the new website. So, but if people want to know more about it, they can get a hold of me. Their current website is oldfallsvillagepark.com, and it does have a fair amount of information right now, but it's, like I said, I'm in the middle of redoing the whole thing. But it should be interesting. Unfortunately, with my situation, I can't be there, so we're going to have to try to figure out something if we would set a table up, or I might be able to be there for a certain number of hours. I'm just not quite sure yet. So that sort of messes me up, but I'll get a list out of at least the schedule and that, but it is an all-day thing from what I understand. But like I said, I don't have a schedule yet.
I remember right in the past, they used to have something on the grounds to eat or not. What was
I know they'll have some stuff to drink, especially they'll have a beer station. I'm not sure about food.
They've had food in
it's
the past. They've had food.
Yeah, have they?
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I know on Friday and Saturday nights they have their fish fry. So, which is done by Marco's Pizza.
Well, thank you for, bringing that up for us, and that please check to see, and I'm not trying to speak for on our half of the people here at our club, but I think a lot of people would be willing to do it. It's like, hey, if you want us to come in and take some pictures, well, we're willing to do it for free, just as long as our admission is, free. I think, I think that's
and I'll look and let everybody know. I might be able to get a bunch of passes for it. So
okay.
Yeah, this is Chris in Grafton. I've been seeing a lot of press about the on the Z mount side, the Tamron 35 to 150, and of course now we have this new Nikon Super Zoom 24 to 400 or so. Anyone have any thoughts on those kinds of lenses?
I like the range. I really like the range. And if you don't need a fast, if you're only doing outdoor photography where you don't need a faster shutter speed, with an F in that, I think it works out great, because that's a one lens does it all.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to get a simple setup there for my next Nikon. So
I've got the 24-200 Z mount for Nikon, and it's just a really handy lens. It works very well in all situations. You don't want to be changing lenses. It's kind of a go-to lens. That 400, it spiked my interest, but not right now. I can't afford it, but I like the 24-200. It's very useful.
okay, thanks.
yeah, I think the 24-200 would be a little sharper. The biggest drawback with that 24-400 is that it's an f8 at 400, and it's an f4.5, I believe, at 24 millimeter. That's a huge shift in f-stops.
Yeah.
And was designed originally for people that were shooting cell phone shots and wanted to get something better in an all-in-one lens. And I think for general purpose stuff, it might be good, but I'd say the 24-200 would be a better lens.
Okay.
Probably be sharper and a lot smaller. This thing gets pretty big when it's zoomed out at 400 millimeter.
Yes.
And I think they tried to cram way too much lens into that one lens.
Yeah.
The Tamron, that range is a little better. That was what, 35 to
150, and that's a f2.8, so it's a little faster.
Oh,
Actually, I'm kind of leaning towards that one for a lot of my general stuff. And I still have the Tamron 18-400, which for the DX side is working wonderfully. I get a lot of good nature photography because that's like a 600 millimeter, with the DX crop in there. Wonderful lenses.
Then I would probably stick with what you have right now. I mean, if you're starting from scratch, well, then that might be a different story.
Yeah. Very good.
64 was good enough for Ansel Adams.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. That f8 sort of bothered when I heard about the lens, and I thought 24-400, yeah, that'd be a nice range lens. That sort of was the same as the 28-300 that I used to have on the DSLRs. But then I saw the f-stop range, and I go, it's just not practical at that f-stop. If it would have been one stop or two, you could really tolerate it, but it's a 4-stop range. And f8 at 400 millimeter, I just don't think that's all that practical. I mean, it's priced right. It's a little over $1,000, but I don't know. I'm not too excited about it. Excuse me.
Well, thanks
But-
for the insights. I'll pursue, kind of continue to check things out. Like I said, I'm probably looking at the Tamron 35 to 150 for, that fits right into what I want to do with some of my,
Yeah.
full frame
It
stuff.
really depends on what you're photographing too.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't that big lens is nice all in one, but yeah, it's sort of a f8. You need a lot of light at f8 during the day it's going to be fine, but not much else.
We'll have to do some of those beer and clicks and things they do like in Austin where they bring in the big, Nikon and Tamron, the big vendors, and we'll have to somehow get them in our camp so we can demo their equipment and everything when it comes out.
Yeah, we need to get big. Either Wacko needs to get a lot bigger or something to be able to bring those guys in. It's getting harder to bring all that stuff together anymore.
Yeah.
They don't do that as much as what they used to.
Mm-hmm. Great,
It's very
thank
hard.
you.
It's very hard because you like to test this equipment out before buying it, because some of this equipment is very pricey.
Yep.
Well, you can always rent it first. I've
True.
done that at times. Rent it and try it.
Yeah, that's always a good idea.
There's a really good website, photographylife.com, and they do a lot of lens reviews there, and they'll have sample images and everything, and pretty much go in depth on the lenses. So that's a good jumping off point to see if it's even something you'd want to deal with.
Jared Poland did a really good YouTube video on that lens and of course several other different lenses. And then Tony and Chelsea does a really nice job too.
Yeah, I'm familiar with both of them, or all of those. They're pretty good.
I have a quick question for Jim on the bird photography. What focus mode are you using to capture birds?
I am using 3D with bird eye detection.
Ah, okay.
And
So
it's working very well for me.
is that Canon? Is that on a Canon
That's
or
the Nikon.
Nikon? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
if it catches the eye, it grabs it and holds it very well, and then I just shoot away.
And then what's your f-stop, Jim?
Most of those have been have been at 4.5. All of the bird ones, they're all 400 prime lens, 4.5, maybe 1/1500th of a second, and 3D bird motion eye. That's it. Works real well.
Oh, so those are all fixed prime lenses, so you can't zoom in out?
That one is, I can cheat. I can make it a 600 by going in the crop mode.
Crop mode, okay.
And I do have a doubler for it, which I've put on there. And I can't tell. I mean, it looks clear to me. So maybe a pro could tell the difference. But it makes a pretty decent clear 800. So I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, I've read some reviews on the ×2, and some people kind of poo-pooed it, but you have good success with it. It's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'll have to actually bring in some samples or something and see if we can tell if it's a crop to a larger size or if it's shot with the 800.
Yeah, I did hear the same thing where the 2 makes it a little softer, not as sharp.
That's what they say. I can't tell.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing those shots, Jim.
Do that.
We did have some really beautiful shots on some of the birds. Some of those birds were just incredibly sharp, and it's like, wow, beautiful colors. I mean, you did a really fantastic job.
They weren't hard to process. These are not a lot of work in them. So just came out that way.
Nice shots.
Well, it is 9:09.
Yeah.
I guess we can, go home already. We are already home. And that. Hopefully.
Fortunately.
Hopefully we
Depending
don't
on how
have to
much
shovel
snow
tomorrow.
everybody gets.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's been a lot of talk lately about the Comet 12P,
Okay.
and I did go out and shoot the other night. I got a good clear night, and I did get a couple halfway decent shots of it if you want to see them.
Yeah, why not?
I can share my screen.
I know next week I'm flying out for the eclipse, weather permitting, so that should be hopefully fun.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that was a stack of 60-second exposure. So I'm on a tracking mount with a 432 millimeter lens.
What was the lens again, did you say?
432 millimeter. It's a 72 millimeter f6 telescope.
Okay.
And that is tracking,
Wow.
like I say, these are 60-second exposures stacked. So
Wow.
Where's the devil? I don't see any horns.
you can see it a little bit here. There's a slight split in there, but it's not as pronounced as it has been at times. So
How far up in the sky is it? Is it pretty low to the horizon?
it is fairly low, yeah, right now. That's why you're seeing this sort of lightning along the bottom here. You're getting sky glow from the cities around it, but
Is that where you
This is
shot?
right after sunset, right?
yeah. So this was shot probably about 8:30.
And that shot of the city, that's probably Madison. Is that the direction?
No, that would probably be Waterford and Muskego.
Oh,
'Cause I'm
okay.
shooting from Racine, so
Okay. So northwest, what you're
yeah.
shooting, right?
Yep.
No, that's really nice. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
They say it's supposed to brighten up a little bit. We'll see, but this is still a not a naked eye comet, so it's
Okay.
not like you could look up it and find it without binoculars. So
I'm wondering how that, although up here it's not going to be 100%, it would be interesting to see if anyone's going to try and get some shots like that during the eclipse, the total eclipse.
it would be a challenge. If you had the right tracking mount, you could probably do it, but even at the line of totality, you're only going to have 4 minutes of totality.
Yes.
So
Make
you
it
couldn't
quick.
do too much like this because this is actually a stack of like 8 60-second shots. So
Wow.
yeah, it's over 4 minutes already. So
Yeah. It's just going to be fun to see the eclipse, even though it's not at 90%, but not too shabby.
Yeah, up
That's
here,
if we get clear skies, and I mean, the odds are we're not going to get clear skies.
Well, it's funny because I see the prediction, they said down south was supposed to be the best. Now the prediction is it's like going to be 100%. It's going to be coverage, completely cloudy. And farther north is going to be better. So the complete opposite. So they're all over the place. They're all over the place with the forecasts. And it's
we might be lucky because that week we're supposed to have sunny weather all next week. So we may actually get to see some of it. At least we don't get all of it, but
I guess I heard that supposedly Menards also sells the eclipse glasses for what, $1.99 or $2.99?
Yeah,
I was
just
gonna
make
say,
sure you get
I was gonna say, if
certified
you're
ones.
if you're planning on viewing the eclipse, make sure you got proper eye protection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I worry about so many people not using the proper eye protection, or even if there's a scratch in their lens, like, oh, this will be fine. And I worry about a lot of people going blind. And I just seen a video today. It's like there might be a chance where you might not notice that for a couple days before it really affects your eyes.
Yes.
So I
Well,
didn't know that.
Yeah, plus you can burn out your camera sensor very easy if you don't put the right filter on it.
Yes.
Yep.
So, be very careful.
And if you do pick up glasses someplace, look for the ISO mark on them.
Yes.
That means they're ISO certified. So, but I have heard of some sites selling knockoffs. So
Yeah.
Right.
It's
it is
not
a
worth
challenge.
it. It's not
No.
worth ruining your eyes. And the sad thing is, it's, you know, if in doubt, even if you want to take pictures with your camera, and that, if in doubt, don't even take the chance of ruining your camera.
Yep. Yeah, typically we have solar filters that we'll put over all our cameras and protect them. So
How many stops are they usually? Are they like 16 stops or 10 stop filters?
even more than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
just looking on B&H, and they're the ones that they have say they're 100,000.
Yeah.
Also,
You do not want to use a 20-stop neutral density filter. That will not do the trick.
yeah, I was
No.
going to just say that. Yeah, do not use a neutral density. Even 20
Yeah.
stop is not it's not designed for this solar.
Yeah, and it will let some of the wrong wavelengths in that will definitely ruin your sensor. You may not see as much through the camera, but the camera's seeing a lot more. So make sure you use the right kind of filters on the camera.
and it's okay to take it off during the totality?
Only if you're
you're
at
in the
totality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, at
If you're here,
100%.
no.
Yeah.
If you're here, you're going to be 90% covered, but there's a 10% still
Yeah.
emitting a
Yeah,
lot of light.
Peter's showing one of the filters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I have on my 135 millimeter lens. It's an f 2.8, I think it is, or f2. I don't know. I actually did take a couple solar pictures over the last couple of months, but I was hoping to see something else besides the sun, but I never did.
You wanted to see some sunspots, or you wanted to see the solar flares?
I wanted to see Nibiru, Planet X, and I couldn't catch anything. So,
Well, it
who
should
knows?
be interesting in that. Just make sure everyone eye protection, and if in doubt, don't even look at the sun. It's not worth it. So,
Yeah.
well, I guess it's 9:18. I guess that's about it. Thank you everyone
Yep.
for coming out tonight. I thought it was a really good presentation, and that it's definitely a different viewpoint, different interesting on not focus stacking, but to get as much focus as possible. So I'm curious about trying a higher f-stop and seeing how sharp I can get the picture back.
Yep, you'll have to play with it, and we'll have to look at showing some of the sharpening techniques that you can do to help people out.
So, all right, well, everyone, I guess that's it. Thank you guys for coming out. I do appreciate that. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the show. And I guess we will talk to you and see you next month.
Next month with Lewis Katz and the image review. So
Yeah, we're doing a rain check on that one.
yeah, since he had lost all his internet the last time. So
Hopefully we won't have any issue this time, but
Yep.
stuff happens, technology.
yeah.
So, all right, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for submitting the great photos too. Have a great evening.